There's disagreement between Cape Town officials and the Minister of Transport, Sindisiwe Chikunga. This as the Santaco strike enters its 7th day today, leaving thousands of commuters stranded. The impounding of taxis have led to violent clashes in the city, including some people sadly losing their lives. Chikunga accusing the city of being arrogant by implementing bylaws that are inconsistent with national legislation. She is calling now for the immediate release of impounded vehicles as she attempts to resuscitate the talks. Let's get reaction now from the Mayor of Cape Town, Geordin Hill-Lewis, who connects to us via the video link. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for your time. Let's kick off the conversation with the reservations by the Minister of Transport, who says that you're not following national legislation, but if you claim you do, then the manner in which you are applying them is completely wrong. Is it possible that there is somewhat of a problem with how the laws, the transport laws, are being interpreted by your city?
It is absolutely true that we are interpreting them quite strictly. I think that that is the way that they were meant to be interpreted, to protect customers, to protect passengers, and to protect other road users from lawless taxis and taxi drivers who do not obey the rules of the road. But it is not true that we are going outside the law. The minister is wrong there. Her act, the National Land Transport Act, an act which she is the custodian of as national minister, allows for the impoundment for 3 offences, and only 3 offences. 1, no operating licence. 2, no driver's licence. And 3, behaviour which is contrary to the conditions of your operating licence. Those are the only 3 reasons that we impound. And taxi drivers often break the law in one of those 3 respects.
Yeah.
And for that, we believe it is the right thing. It's the only effective thing to impound the vehicle. We can dish out fines by their hundreds of thousands. You and I both know, your viewers know, that those fines do not work to change driver behavior. The only thing that works is if you take really tough action and say, if you behave like that, if you drive on the wrong side of the road, if you cross over red robots in crowded intersections, if you drive on the pedestrian walkway, you will lose your vehicle and you will have to pay a big fine to go and get it back. Yeah. That is when we start to see behavior improving.
All right. So when we talk about interpreting the law, in effect, what we are saying is that the city has taken both these, or specifically the National Land Act. You've taken that and you have built in it a bylaw as a city, which then allows you to impound vehicles that infringe the traffic laws.
No, sir. The Act itself, the National Land Transport Act, the NLTA, allows us to impound. It has a section 87 called the impoundment of public transport vehicles. And that whole section tells you how you impound vehicles and for what. We only use that. The reason this debate has been muddied by bylaws, the Act only applies to public transport vehicles. So we took the bylaw and used the provisions of the Act to apply it to other vehicles as well, like private vehicles, delivery vehicles, and so on, and your and my vehicle. So I've always laughed at this idea that we are targeting minibus taxis, when in fact the law only applies, the National Act only applies to minibus taxis and public transport vehicles like buses. We have taken that and applied it to all vehicles in the city. That is what we've done with the bylaw.
Okay. Have you had a conversation with the minister about this interpretation, which she clearly says is wrong?
I haven't, to be honest with you. I had a long meeting with the minister on, these days are all going into one another. On Monday, I had a long meeting with the minister. and it was mainly about the strike and about our negotiating position. We did not get into the law. I then saw that yesterday she had a press conference where she really attacked us quite personally and viciously on the interpretation of the law. I haven't yet had a chance to discuss that with her, but I make to her the same offer that I made to Santaco. We have got every impoundment is accompanied by an impoundment notice. We can go through those together one by one and see if we can identify ones where we think our officers have been too overzealous. I am very confident that in all the many hundreds of impoundment notices, we will not find one or maybe one or two where that applies. Yeah. Overwhelmingly, we are impounding vehicles for the right reasons to keep commuters and passengers safe.
You're on record as saying you refuse to engage with criminality. With that in mind, how do you hope to resolve this impasse? It's a very big decision today for Santaco as to whether they continue the strike or they stop.
Well, I think our principal position has worked. We've just about 24 hours of zero incidents on our road. We've had peace and quiet. And so I will honor my commitment. If that peace holds, then I'm happy to talk to Santaco. And that's what I've said, and I will stand by that. But I do think we have to, as governments, across government, send a message, not just to the taxi industry, but to any industry that wishes to obtain something from government, that violence is not the way to do that. You cannot bring us to the negotiating table through violence. Otherwise, we will set the example, and everyone will follow that example, and that will be terrible for our country. So I'm standing by that principled position, but if this peace holds, if we have no incidents, I'm very happy to honor my end of the bargain and talk with Santaco again, and I sincerely hope that they go back to work tomorrow as they have promised to do.
As we speak, how many vehicles are in your impoundment depots, minibus taxis to be specific?
Several thousand. I can't give you an exact number, but several thousand.
And you will only release them under what condition?
We will not release them, sir. They will be released when the impoundment fee is paid. What I said is that if Santaco brings me examples of what they claim are kind of malicious or overzealous impoundments, then I will look at those examples, and if we agree together that this is in fact an officer that has gone a little bit, out of bounds, then I'll absolutely work to release those with them. But I seriously trust the professionalism of our officers, and I think that they do a great job. And I suspect we will find very, very few of those examples out of the many thousands of impoundments that we have done.
Yeah, thousands of these minibus taxis are in your depot right now. How much per vehicle will it take to release them, if indeed you do decide to release any?
For your first offence, your first impoundment, the release fee is somewhere around 6,000 Rand, if I remember correctly. And then it goes up. Some of these vehicles have been impounded several times because they are not roadworthy, they are dangerous, they have smooth tires, whatever the case is. And so it goes up from there.
Yeah. Let's talk about the social impact of the strike, Mr. Mayor. There are those who say children have not been able to go to school. Parents are not able to go to work in order to put food on the table. The welfare, or rather the healthcare institutions, some of them have had to close, particularly in the poorest areas. The perception here being built is that, here we go, the Western Cape government, specifically City of Cape Town, run by a particular political party, the Democratic Alliance, simply does not care about the well-being of the poor. How do you change that perception?
The only reason we do these impoundments is for the well-being of the poor. Every time that we have a terrible taxi accident on our streets, and people die inside taxis, as happens far too often in our country, not just in Cape Town, but everywhere in South Africa. Taxis are the leading source of or cause of road deaths in South Africa. And every time that something like that happens, we have a loud demand from the public, from the community, from the media to do something about this, to be tougher on taxis. And so it is precisely those commuters, those passengers who rely on those taxis, who have no other options, that we have a duty to uphold the law and to keep them as safe as possible when they go about and go to work and get around. And so we have to uphold the rules of the road. And what's interesting to me, I forwarded some articles to the minister, and I can forward them to you as well, of impoundments in other cities in South Africa. Durban, for example, recently announced that they had impounded 73 taxis, minibus taxis, in one day in a blitz operation in Durban. I don't think there's any day that we have impounded 73 taxis. And Santaco was very upset about that. There's no claim there that they haven't got the interests of the poor at heart. There it is kind of championed and applauded as standing up for the rule of law and road safety. So I do think, with respect, I take with a pinch of salt the constant drone that you will hear whenever we do something about reducing it to a matter of race. I think that we have to do what is right for the people who use minibus taxis, the passengers, not for the drivers, not for the owners. Our responsibility is to the passengers. And that is why it's so strange for me that the minister has kind of turned herself into a minister of taxis, not a minister of transport. A minister of transport acts in the interests of commuters. A minister of taxis acts in the interests of taxi owners. We are very clear on which side of that line we stand.
I asked you this question earlier as to whether you think the Minister of Transport is playing politics. If we take this to the political realm, yesterday you would have heard the ANC-led alliance in the Western Cape. They're very clear that this is a demonstration by the DA-run government to openly undermine national government. Is that in fact what you're doing?
That's a bizarre statement. I have no interest in undermining national government whatsoever. The minister does not have the legal authority to instruct us to release the taxis. So it's not about undermining. It's about just sticking to the law. She does not have that authority. So if she is unhappy with the way that her law, the National Land Transport Act, is applied, she's free to change it. We don't have that power. We don't run the national parliament. She's free to change it. But I believe that the law was written in a way to try and help keep people safer, and that it should be implemented to its fullest degree. And just because we be the only ones doing that in South Africa does not mean that we should attract the criticism and the ire of the minister. In fact, if I was in her position, I would be saying, here is a city that's actually taking the law that we have written and we have given them and is actually doing something with it. And that should be applauded.
Based on what we have discussed and exactly the last point you're making, it would appear that there clearly is an impasse between the local sphere of government in the city of Cape Town and national government. The two of you simply disagree. Do you think that an independent adjudication to interpret these transport laws could be the next avenue?
Well, in fact, we do have an independent adjudicator. It's called the courts. And again, I've said to the minister and to Santaco, why, if they object so strongly, why haven't they taken us to court? It's strange to me that their first avenue is to burn things in the streets or to go on TV and make a lot of noise and shout about us. But they haven't used the avenue open to every person in a democracy that is founded on the rule of law. They can challenge the impoundments. They can challenge our decisions in court if they want to. And I think it is telling that they have never done so.
Very interesting indeed. Thank you very much for your time. Geordin Hill-Lewis is the mayor of the city of Cape Town.